What's up, y'all? It's your boy Zay. Hold on, let me get this together real quick. All right, we about to go in on this presidential debate and give you my reaction on this video. And hold on one second. Give me 1 second, y'all. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna give y'all my reaction on this video. And I think it's a good time. I got a little bit before I go to work. Got a couple hours before it's time for me to go to work. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do the reaction video to the presidential debate, and we're gonna see what the candidates are talking about. Ready to ride now. This thing had no fluid in it. All right, so right now, to see what we're gonna hear from Kamala Harris. People have been waiting to see where she stands on her policies and things like that. We haven't really heard from her in a couple years that they've been in office. 3.5 years they've been in office, so everybody's waiting to see what Kamala's stance on certain issues are as far as the economy and all that. So hopefully she'll be able to give us a little more clarity as to why she feels like she deserves the vote for the people in her party and independents. So hopefully we can get that from Donald Trump. From Kamala Harris. And this is my first live, man. So I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Y'all make sure y'all hit that like button, hit that subscription button for my first live. I don't know what made me want to go live. I just thought it was a good time for me to go live, just because I wanted it to be a good amount of content, and I feel like this is a good thing for me to weigh in on. I'm assuming that the moderators are gonna make sure that they answer these questions and try to keep each other from talking over each other, but pretty sure in the past Trump has been known to get his way with getting the last word in sometimes. So we're gonna see how that's gonna go. All right, so let's go ahead and get it going. We're gonna see this presidential debate gonna pan out, and y'all hit that like button. And when I get it going, y'all make sure y'all can hear it. I got it playing close enough.
The high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election. Their face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
Just a couple add-ons. We're gonna skip right on past them.
This is an ABC News special. The most consequent moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump. We will soon be a great nation again. Face-to-face. Historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis. Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written, no loud. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris.
Good debate.
Let me know if y'all can hear
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. On the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump.
Okay, so the original question was, do you feel like Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? I feel like she did have to. I don't think she answered. She did use that as an opportunity to kind of give us insight on where she feels like will help the economy. Just myself, personally, I know right now I'm making about close to $70,000 a year, and it's still tough trying to maintain a 4-person household. $6,000 tax credit for children, I feel like would increase the burden very fast, just because you would have people having kids out of wedlock. You got the marriage rate, which is really low. Divorce rate is really high. 2-parent households are at an all-time low, and people are already kind of struggling to raise the families that they have now. So including another child into the household, I feel like would ultimately increase the birth rate. $6,000 compared to the 18 years that you would have to raise the child, I feel wouldn't even scratch the surface as far as expenses. As far as the startups, the $50,000 startups, it reminds me of when during the pandemic, they had the relief money for people who are, well, the relief money for people who had small businesses. They were given the relief money. So $50,000 for small businesses. I feel like people would just open up LLCs to get the tax credit. Like, I'm trying to figure out if that would be LLC. Would that be per person? Because right now I know I've got about 3 business ideas right now that I could put on paper as a LLC. So $50,000 for a startup business. If I start up 3 businesses, would that be $150,000 worth of tax credits? With the inflated dollar right now, um, wondering where that money would come from. But I feel like the moderator should have made her go a little bit more into whether she feels like they're better off than 4 years ago. But she did ultimately put something out there as to where she stands, because we haven't really heard from her in the last 3.5 years.
2 minutes.
First of all, no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some ways. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do.
The dollar's inflated. If they take those tariffs off, that will be that will lower the amount of money coming into the United States. They have to keep those tariffs on.
Taken in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 20%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying.
I guess it was Springfield. He's talking about the Haitian immigrant issue that they're having in Springfield.
Our country. They're dangerous. They're at this level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would let Vice President Harris respond.
Immigration does play a part with the economy, because if you've got people coming in, you do have to have a good amount of border control. When the economy is doing bad, you do have to make sure that the people are supposed to be here are working and able to provide before you have other coming in and taking resources, because when they get here, they do have to provide for themselves at the minimum. So that is a part of economic growth and development.
The economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century.
It wasn't a lot of people working during that pandemic, and a lot of people were getting unemployment as well. Let's not forget, people were getting unemployment.
Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear grievances and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
I'm not sure if he endorsed that yet. He keeps saying he hasn't read it. I don't know if he's saying that he's not a part of Project 2025. So let's see what he's got to say about that.
I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially, create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic.
Like I said, a lot of people, they weren't working. And people got, as far as people being taken care of by assistance, in order to get those people back to work, I think a part of those bailouts helped with those sign-on bonuses that people were getting, to help get people back to work. But with the pandemic, we got to remember people were getting unemployment, and government resources were being exerted to help people get by during the pandemic when people weren't working.
We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that no one thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs, bounce back jobs, these were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their best.
I'm guessing bounce back, he's talking about the jobs, like I said, with the sign-on bonuses, because people didn't want to work. They were good with working from home, and that's another issue. Commercial real estate is at an all-time low as far as people paying their bills on time for commercial real estate, because people are working from home.
Benefit, but I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So, Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America.
The opportunity economy, I wonder, is that what she's talking about with the $50,000 for the startups? Yeah, I don't think that would stimulate the economy. I feel like that would increase fraud more than to stimulate the economy.
What Goldman Sachs...
Oh, and then also, the tax breaks. Everyone is entitled to the tax breaks if you're a producer. So if you produce something and you have an LLC, you can get the same, you can get these write-offs and things like that. But you have to be a producer, not a consumer. So that's available to everybody. An 18-year-old can go and start an LLC and have the same tax breaks, you know what I mean, as some of these big companies. It's all about what you're producing. So those are available for everybody.
Has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he's more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan, as it calls, is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that
Doubling the tariffs, inflation, he's got to increase it. It's got to be increased. It's not enough at what it is right now.
costs are then on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have high prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't.
Inflation was still high. He was in office. We've had an inflation issue for a while. It's worse now, but he can't say that he didn't have inflation. He did have inflation. Inflation's been an issue for a minute.
Go out and buy cereal or bacon or egg or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. You heard what the president said there because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy of China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing. Focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Let's tweet, "Thank you, President Xi!" ! When we know that she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President.
The moderator should have made her answer. The question was why they tariffs on for the 3 years. She dodged that question.
I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policy they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you get these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's for our economy, too. You mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy.
That's what I was saying. That's what I'm saying, too. Immigration is a part of the economy. You've got to control that to an extent when the economy's not doing too good.
They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion.
Okay, before we get to that, let's go back over this economy. So, I don't think Harris gave us responses that we needed to hear from her as far as questions and about her policies. Trump, he sounds he's gonna, stick to the same plan as far as tariffs, lowering taxes. The plan with the $6,000 tax credit, I don't think that help. I think that would actually harm the economy because there would be a surge in birth rates. And the tax cut, the $50,000 tax cut, I feel like would increase fraud. I don't think that would help as well. And then because you already have a break for expenses. Like when you're LLC, you can write off your expenses. So, being able to be wise about your expenses and your expense write-offs, that $50,000 tax credit, that's just gonna make people start opening LLCs to get that tax credit. You know what I mean? Like I can open up 3 LLCs and have $150 worth of tax credits, and get a big fat refund. How would that work? So I'm not sure I agree with her plan on the economic side.
President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you support many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that...
I haven't heard anything about executions when it comes to the abortion. I haven't heard anything about the execution.
Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's an execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And it's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is...
Okay. The only thing I'm going to say about that is a recollection. I do remember back in the day, I feel like 9 months is a little extreme as far as getting that procedure done. But I do recall a time where maybe in maybe the 6th or 7th month, someone could have that procedure done.
No state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the provisions of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice.
I don't know if somebody tell me how that would work if a national abortion ban. I'm not sure how that would work if it's on the state level. This is a sensitive topic as far as the abortion issue. I'm not sure if he's able to sign a national abortion ban if it's in the hands of the state. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know. I wouldn't expect Trump to win this portion of the debate, just because it's such an emotional topic. And then you do have this issue in every state. So the states where it's not available, of course, those states are going to lean a little bit closer to one side or the other, just because it's not available. But of course, that's a sensitive topic as well. She's also able to appeal to a lot of the black women as well on this issue. And I think that's because abortion rates in the black community amongst black women is fairly high.
President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated and ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans to get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it. She'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane.
Can barely afford child care as it is. That's what I was saying. That $6,000 tax credit wouldn't even scratch the surface. That doesn't have anything to do with abortion. I just wanted you guys to see if she did recognize that taking care of a child right now is tough. It's tough.
Next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. I know
this is one of those issues where, underlying issue as far as like they said, the rape, the incest, they agree on that part. You know what I mean? They agree on the part that they feel like that is wrong. Which I will assume any considerate human being would have sympathy for a situation like that. They just have two different stances on how they feel like it should be handled.
a lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader in IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I've been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask a question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question.
you
Would you veto?
could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of
I don't know about the afterbirth. Maybe 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. I feel like that's a little OD.
Virginia. The governor of Virginia, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to now to immigration and border security. You were tasked by President Biden getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? Act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
Wondering if the traffic accident you were involved in a year ago is even worth pursuing? Chances are, it could get...
And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative national criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solution, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer, and what you will...
The topic is immigration. We're talking about immigration here. I wonder why she's going to rallies. We're not talking about rallies. We're talking about immigration.
Also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I'll tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris.
Okay, so her stance, I feel like her putting her in support with that bill that will put those excess guards on there. Her supporting that bill is a good stance. I'm not sure if she's got the power to advise Joe Biden. He hasn't really done a good job. It's just handling the immigration issue in the past 3.5 years. But it's good to know that we do have a stance on her as far as what she feels like should be done about the immigration issue, having extra security at the border. Like I said, I'm not sure how much power she has in order to influence Joe Biden when it comes to that. She does, I feel like, she has a good amount of power to raise the issue, because it is an issue. Of course, it's affecting our economy, and that was something that was done recently in the Biden administration. Was the immigration issue. Last couple of years, it wasn't really a big thing for the Biden administration to handle the immigration issue, and they just recently tackling this issue.
Thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to rallies. There's no reason to go.
I don't feel like he should have even had to respond to the rallies, because we're not talking about rallies, we're talking about immigration right now.
And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed.
I guess Springfield, he's talking about the Haitian immigrant issue in Springfield.
In Springfield, They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating.
I don't know if the Haitian people are eating the dogs and the cats. I haven't heard about that. I do know they have a issue with the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, but I'm not sure about the pets and stuff like that.
Eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just verify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe.
Like I said, I don't know if the Haitian immigrants. I know they have a Haitian immigrant issue in Springfield, but I haven't heard anything about them eating the pets of the people that live there.
It's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking
television,
it from the manager.
The dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
Talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already.
We're talking about immigration. I don't think they're doing a good job. I don't think the moderator's doing a job of making them answer the questions about immigration. I feel like the moderator needs to step right now and make them both answer these questions that he's asking about immigration, because they're both dodging the immigration. Well, we know Trump's stance on immigration, but we're on the actual topic of immigration now. They're talking about rallies. She's talking about her endorsements. We need to know. We need to stick to the subject of immigration, and I feel like that's the moderator's job right now.
Just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond.
Yeah, thank you, because when I hear that, it's a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so gracious. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know their parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes him. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job. And they never fire anybody. Look at the economy.
The moderator needs to step in. They're not talking about the immigration issue.
Look at inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Hey, I know you're in the middle of something, but I wonder if you just take a few seconds to pray with me real quick.
The moderator needs to step in and make them answer these questions. The moderator's
Lord
job
Jesus,
is sure that we're sticking on
Let me continue on immigration.
and that we're and making sure that they're sticking to subject. You know, we want to know. I don't know where Harris still stands on the immigration issue. We said that. I said that they're their party hasn't done a good job of that issue until recently, when we had to start campaigning. Once the presidential election started getting kicked up, the immigration issue became a big thing for the Democrats. But for the last 3.5 years, we haven't really had that issue, and I mean we haven't really had a solution from this party. And I feel like the moderator needs to make them answer these questions. Immigration
was what you wanted to talk about earlier. So let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? And you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah.
He said, yeah. He said, will us be going door to door in this country? He said, yeah. So, does that mean that every door be getting knocked on, or how would this take place? I'm interested to see on how the immigrants we found and deported, because that's exercising the military, exercising local police, and I'm trying to figure out what that involves. Searching homes, would that involve, like, what kind of intelligence would that involve?
It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists, allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their, like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her, put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it, because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what's done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought.
President Trump, as you know,
Okay, so he didn't answer the question as far as, well, actually, when he said, would they be going door to door, he did say, yeah. So I'm assuming that's his answer. He's going to have National Guard and police enforcing, I'm guessing, door to door. I'm assuming that's what he said, yeah. And then he didn't really elaborate on that. He kind of then pointed the finger as to what the Biden administration has done, letting people into the country. So he dodged that question. The moderator should make him answer that question.
He says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been executed for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called defunding federal law enforcement 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people. Address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for. Address what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people...
Okay, so right now she took this opportunity to bring up Trump's cases, his international cases. We're still on the topic of Immigration. I do think, since people have been waiting to hear from her, I do think that was strategic of her to implement that as a response, just because she has to try to attack his credibility, and she knows that that's a subject that is sensitive to a lot of the American people. Um, so when we're talking about immigration and international crimes, like the strategy of her using that to remind the American people about his international crimes was strategically placed. That was a good strategically placed response on her behalf.
We're exhausted with this same old tired playbook. Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
Okay, so just like it was important strategic for Kamala to point that out, Donald Trump had a good defense, and he also did point out Biden in that as well on his documents case. Of course, he had to defend that. He didn't have a choice. He had to defend that shot at him that Kamala just took. So let's keep it going.
Thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice.
I don't know if he's able to terminate the Constitution of the United States. I don't think that power is held in the presidency.
Against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people to stop him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to.
I knew Trump was gonna. He's known to try to get that last word. He's been getting the last word. It's strategic, man. This is they're in the boxing. You know, that's just like when you go to court and the prosecutor or the defense lawyer says something, and then the judge says, "Hey, you guys, pay that last part. Don't mind. They've already heard that part." So, strategic for him to get that last word.
Get to Lindsay.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback.
Fracking. Some people don't know what fracking is. Fracking is essentially regulations that protect the environment when it comes to oil drilling, when it comes to protecting water systems, protecting the local environment when it comes to oil drilling. So some people don't know what fracking is, but that's what fracking is. It's like safety regulations that protect the environment when you're drilling.
Programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking.
So the point she made was fracking and disarming. Well, I'm not gonna say disarming, but the gun issue with her and regulating gun control.
Because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because...
Hold on. Let me just talk about the domestic oil and the international oil, because as of right now, the Biden administration pretty much destroyed the relationship that we have with Saudi Arabia when it comes to oil being imported into the country. The petrodollar being the reserve currency for the world, you know, we had that relationship with Saudi, and they were the number one. They're the number one importer of oil. You know, for us, we need that relationship with Saudi Arabia in order to keep these gas prices low. So with the Biden administration essentially not destroying, but them not having a good relationship with Saudi Arabia, maintaining that relationship with Saudi Arabia, and putting a stain on the petrodollar. Of course, we're hearing about the BRICS nation, which is Brazil, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. They're doing trade deals now amongst themselves, and they're trying to cut out the dollar. So, you know, they pretty much said, hey, we're going, you know, we're not going to need as much oil, but the issue is this isn't going to happen overnight. You know, we still need that shit with Saudi Arabia, and ultimately it's going to destroy the credibility of the dollar, because we don't have all companies trading with the dollar. We have them doing trades amongst themselves and pretty much cutting us out. So, yeah, let's keep going.
As of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was by our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work, to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then...
The moderator needs to step in right now and have her answer these issues of the international oil and domestic oil.
On protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that's done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
So he asked her why her policies have changed, not her values. So her policy, how she has gone back and forth on the policies, is what we're trying to figure out here.
And name calling, the true measure of the leader, is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. When people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. She's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out. She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
We got a lot of back and forth going on, a lot of pointing fingers. The mayor is not doing a good job at all. In my opinion, he's not doing a good job.
This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she...
Okay, so I just want to say that this is the second time that the gun confiscation has come up. The first time when the moderator asked Kamala Harris of fracking and gun confiscation, why her policies have flip-flopped, changed about fracking and gun confiscation. The first time she didn't address the fracking. Oh no, she didn't address the gun confiscation. She addressed the fracking issue, but she didn't let the gun confiscation. She didn't address the gun confiscation. She talked about her values. It's important that she addressed the gun confiscation issue because Texas is still one of those states that she needs Texas as well. And of course, we know Texas is a big 2 community. Actually, the United States is a big 2A nation, and we have a lot of gun owners in the United States. We might be, as far as citizens concerned, probably the most armed nation in the world. So it's important that she address that gun confiscation, especially because her reputation as a prosecuting attorney. She's locked up a lot of people, and before she did have a strong stance on gun confiscation, she wanted to regulate that. So I'm hoping that she will address that.
Won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. They took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as she
We're out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Like I said, the solar and the solar, those are stances that they want to kind of implement as far as the going green movement. But we still gonna need oil. We still need the relationships with Saudi Arabia. We still need those international relationships when it comes to oil. So we can't just cut them out right now. Like, this isn't a process that's gonna be done next year. You know, process of going green is gonna take some time. So we are gonna need some international oil relationships, particularly Saudi Arabia, which the Biden administration has not done a good job with keeping that relationship intact.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. In the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically. I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer. that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world.
Okay, so we're talking about when they marched on the Capitol. He's asking him, does he regret anything about the Capitol? His part, and they feel like him inciting the people that were outside the Capitol to march to the Capitol, and ultimately, of course, that ended up in them storming the Capitol and desecrating the Capitol.
Because of it. But let me just when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up first. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. We want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
Okay, so before she responds, Trump is essentially saying that he was just there to give a speech, and he was not responsible for the security. I do think in situations like that, when you do have large groups of people gathering like that, you do have to have security in place. I'm assuming that he is not in charge of the security. He's saying Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the security. If he offered 10,000 National Guard or local enforcement officers and it was rejected, then I feel like that would fall on her if she's in charge of the security. I feel like if it's any building, it's a government building, the Capitol, the White House, anything like that, these buildings should be protected, so I'm not sure who was in charge of the security, but I feel like he did have a voice in order to kind of help prevent the march into the Capitol. I feel like he could have stepped in and used his voice a little bit more once he saw things were unfolding, but that is something else that has to be addressed as well, as far as Nancy Pelosi being in charge of the security during the event.
Send professional invoices and get paid faster, all with the QuickBooks mobile app. Easily create.
I was at on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured and died. And understand, the former president has indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, The former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking, let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different.
Okay, so Kamala Harris took the time to remind us about other instances other than June 6th, where it's been an issue about people that are supporters of Trump, where they feel like they were out of line as far as spewing hateful messages to the public. She had to go back and remind that that wasn't just a one-time occurrence. So like I said, they're in a boxing match right now. I do think that was a good strategically placed response on her behalf as far as the Capitol is concerned, just because she's able to use that as an opportunity to remind the American people that that's more than one occurrence.
Term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra second, you will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. A lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
no
Republican.
Judge looked at it.
And said
they said
no
we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They shouldn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself.
He lost the election. They're in the White House.
But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost, because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany. The biggest said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he won that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert Women were horribly raped. And so, absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right in itself. We would. And how it does so matters. It is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
We left Afghanistan and we are protecting a lot of other countries, and we're wasting a lot of money protecting other countries.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way.
If you're one of the many people struggling financially right now, Bridget's got your back. 50 to 2
have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. When she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I wrote that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Important that these I guess you could say radical nations like Iran, that they don't have a lot of resources in order to fund. You know, that is important. That's a part of national security, and also is important for these different relationships that we have with other countries over the world. You know, we have to trade with people. We have to negotiate with other countries. And when you have countries that are able to fund their militia and their terror organizations, this muddies the water for positive growth for everybody. You know, so I do feel like keeping Iran broke was important.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is, it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go to Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security
Harris.
and importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
President Harris.
Okay, so as far as these international relationships, I don't know. I feel like, they say you should keep your enemies close, your friends close, your enemies closer. You do have to have an open line of communication with countries. This wasn't an issue when Trump was in office, especially the Ukrainian issue. We did leave Afghanistan, but we got into another war. And you have to have an open line of communication and be able to speak with these leaders and be able to cut deals. You got to be able to cut deals in order to make sure things are going forward. But you do have to make sure that your country is on the winning side of that deal. But a portion of that is keeping an open line of communication. The Biden administration, I don't think they've done a good job as far as maintaining open line of communication. Not open line of communication, but just being able to communicate effectively with Russia, with these countries that are ultimate, you could say they're threats, but are opposing. I'm not gonna say opposing, but they're other countries that we have to regard when it comes to operating on an international scale. We do have to regard these countries, and we do have to communicate with these countries, and we do have to somewhat keep the peace with these countries in order for trade deals to get done and all these other things. So
Thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
all right, y'all, so I gotta go be daddy. We're gonna end it right here. I'm gonna come back tomorrow and do the second half. Right now I feel like the moderators should be doing a better job of making sure that they're answering these questions. I'm not gonna say who I have winning right now. I'm gonna wait until I review the second half of the debate in order to give my decision on who I feel like won. Right now you can go back through the commentary and see my stance on what I feel like has been said and how things have been regulated during the debate. So y'all tune in tomorrow. I'm gonna be back tomorrow. I'll do part 2. And y'all make sure y'all hit the like button. Y'all hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Y'all hit that subscribe button. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in to my first live. Thank y'all.